Hey there, it's Irene Lyon, and welcome to this video, to this YouTube channel, and to this world of healing trauma, nervous system health, and all things neuroplasticity. I wanted to touch in on a subject today. I had a few questions that relate to this topic. I've got something from a book that I want to read, and it also is prominent right now in our current time. I'm going to date this video. I'm recording this on early April 2020. So depending on when you see this, when you watch this, it might be in April 2020. It might be in April 2025. I'm not sure. But currently in the world, here on planet Earth, we have a bit of a global pandemic going on with something called the coronavirus. Of course, we don't know how this is going to end up, but there is a lot of stress. There's a lot of panic happening, a lot of uncertainty. And there are also some folks who are actually feeling better. And this is the question that I got, and I've had more than one question around this, and I've been talking to some of my colleagues who are reporting that some of their clients who they are working with in the fields of somatic healing trauma therapy, they're also showing that some of their clients are feeling better, they're sleeping better, and I wanted to unpack what that means and why that might be happening. So this is one of the questions, and it came in through my Instagram feed. So the question is, would love to hear more thoughts on why some people with a history of trauma and PTSD have been feeling better during this current pandemic. So people have been feeling better, and someone else said that they're noticing they're sleeping better, symptoms are shifting. So what does that mean? And to understand what this might mean, we have to understand how a human's original physiology, how our nervous system, our autonomic nervous system, was formed early in life, and what our life was like throughout, our childhood, our infancy, our teenagehood, in our 20s, etc. So the first thing to understand is when we are born, and I'm going to not get into the full dynamics of this because I have other videos that speak to this at length, and I want to get into this question. But nutshell is, when we are young, when we are infants, we are born and we are not able to fully self-regulate our nervous systems. Our nervous system, specifically our autonomic nervous system, and the parts that calm our system down in times of stress aren't fully developed. So we have to learn that through our primary caregiver, usually our mother, our father, our family system. If we have a solid upbringing, secure attachment, safety, like real safety, we're able to express ourselves, feel who we are, do all the things that little human beings like to do, we will grow up with a safe environment, in a secure base, as we would call it. The world, the people are safe, they're to be trusted. And with that comes health later in life. Granted, that person grows and, does things to take care of themselves, take care of their stress, eat well, exercise, good relationships, all those things. But if we are brought up in an environment that is the opposite of that, maybe there was early trauma, early abuse, mom and dad, maybe they had their own struggles with mental illness, chronic illness. Perhaps as a child, you had to have some surgeries to fix some defects within the body. Maybe there was real intense abuse, neglect. So you get the picture. Let's just say there was the opposite of secure, healthy attachment. That individual is going to most likely, as we know through the research, unless the work is done to heal that, will develop what we call a dysregulated nervous system. They will be more susceptible to chronic illness, to mental illness, to relational issues, to the inabilities to connect with the world, to be really in their bodies, safe and secure. So these two scenarios, one person is growing up with what we would call a high level of safety. Their map within their body, their nervous system map, sees the world as a fairly safe place. The other individual with the unsafe environment, with a lot of threat, with a lot of traumatic experience, a lot of adversity, a lot of terror growing up, just never feeling safe, their map is going to be that of threat. And a common thing we hear people say, and I'm kind of paraphrasing and generalizing this, but they'll say, I always feel like the world is a dangerous place. we're all going to die. No one is to be trusted, and I have to do this all myself. It's only me, no one else. And so that's a very common theme we hear with folks who grow up in that environment. Now, here's where it gets interesting. When we get older, when we are, say, adults, as you may be right now, when we are in a situation that is more stressful, and this is not for everyone, this is just one specific kind of portion of people. When they get into a stressful environment, when there's more chaos, they actually feel better because it matches the map, the wiring in which they were brought up into. This is why we will see and we'll hear people say, I know that I'm constantly getting into these abusive relationships, these toxic job environments. I'm always self-sabotaging myself. I'm watching it happen and I can't stop the movie script from happening. It's like we are the saying a moth to a light, where we go to that danger, we go to that unsafety. It's often done unconsciously because that's how we know how to live in the world. To break out of that, which is what I work with and teach my students and clients. When I work with them, we're trying to rewrite that map. We're trying to rewrite the safety map so that it goes from the world is completely dangerous to maybe the world can be a little more safe, a little less dangerous. I did a video quite a while ago on neuroplasticity, and I used train tracks as a metaphor. Be sure to check that out after this video. I'll pop it in the show more section because it dives into neuroplastic change and why it takes time to shift from a map of threat to a map of safety, and it can be done. So if we consider the current situation we're in right now, lots of uncertainty, lots of chaos, it has been thought of and I've seen that those who grew up in that kind of dysregulated state, who may already have PTSD, they're feeling matched by the current chaos in the world. There's a sense that I am no longer alone. Other people are now experiencing the level of dysregulation, uncertainty, and generally this sense, this cellular sense that the world is a dangerous place and we're all going to die. Now, we know that that's not necessarily true. Of course, we also know that people perish and die every day due to natural causes, illnesses, old age, etc. So as a general rule, we know in our mind as humans that at some point we will probably die. As far as I know, that's going to happen. At least we haven't become immortal yet, not our physical body at least. And so we know that eventually that'll happen, but we also don't want to be living in that constant state of threat and stress because it is taxing on the physiology, on the organs, on the brain, on our ability to be in the world, relate to others, and create the things we want to create. I'm going to read something from a book just to kind of supplement this concept. And this is from a book that I absolutely love called Tribe, from Sebastian Junger. He is an author, but also a journalist, and he covered a lot of big wars. So check out his bio if you want to learn more about him. But he has two passages that I want to read. And one has to do with a war that occurred quite a while ago, well, not quite a while ago, 1973. So I'm just going to read this tiny little passage. I hope that's okay, Sebastian and the publishers. I will quote the book below. So this is on page 96. So according to Shalev, so this is a person that he is interviewing, a doctor who studied PTSD, or I guess is studying PTSD. He said, according to Shalev, the closer the public is to the actual combat, the better the war will be understood and the less difficulty soldiers will have when they come home. During the Yom Kippur War of 1973, many Israeli soldiers were fighting on the Golan Heights with their homes at their back, so really close. Of the 1,323 soldiers who were wounded in war and referred for psychiatric evaluation, only around 20% were diagnosed with PTSD, and less than 2% retained that diagnosis 3 decades later. That's pretty big. So the Israelis, what's happening, he is proposing is the Israelis are benefiting from what the author and ethicist Austin Dacey describes as a shared public meaning of war. So a shared public meaning, a social context to what's going on. Shared public meaning gives soldiers a context for their losses and their sacrifice that is acknowledged by most of the society. That helps keep at bay the sense of futility and rage that can develop among soldiers during a war that doesn't seem to end. So I think this is really interesting. Of course, if you want to read more about this, get this book. That's just one little piece. So that's one piece I wanted to read. So if you understand a little bit about this, if you imagine this right now in our global community here, April 2020, we're all being faced with this current situation. It isn't just happening on one continent or another continent, or, in one city. It's occurring all throughout our globe, through all of Earth. All humans, at least who are connected to civilization, know that this is happening. And this rarely occurs. Even in world wars, some countries don't get involved. I know that isn't always the case, but it shows from this research that when there is that common community, when we're closer at home to the combat, we're less likely to end up with PTSD. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. The other is a little more closer to home, at least in North America, and a little more current. He talks about the attacks in 9/11 on the United States in New York. And so this is from page 116. And he writes, the last time the US experienced that kind of unity, so he's talking about another incident, but this kind of unity was briefly after the terrorist attacks of September 11th. There were no rampage of shootings for 2 years after. The effect was particularly pronounced in New York City, where rates of violent crime, suicide, and psychiatric disorders dropped immediately. That's fascinating to me. In many countries, antisocial behavior is known to decline during wartime. I'll say that one more time. In many countries, antisocial behavior is reported to drop after war. So New York suicides rates also dropped by around 20% in the 6 months following the attacks. The murder rate dropped 40%, and pharmacists, this is so fascinating to me, pharmacists saw no increase in the number of first-time patients filling prescriptions for anti-anxiety and antidepressant medication. Furthermore, veterans who were being treated for PTSD at the VA experienced a significant drop in their symptoms in the months after the September 11th attacks. I think that's fascinating. And then to finish off the paragraph, one way to determine what is missing in day-to-day American life may be to examine what behaviors spontaneously arise when that life is disrupted. And so everything put aside in terms of those who are losing their lives right now, who are being affected, and many of us are financially, economically, etc. But we're also seeing this interesting coming together right now. Here in Vancouver, I don't know about it with your cities where you live, every evening at 7 p.m., people are on their balconies, hitting pots, pans, ringing bells, clapping. My husband and I were walking from the grocery store yesterday at around 7 p.m. We didn't have anything to bang or hit, but as soon as 7 o'clock rolled around, everyone in the streets started clapping. Everyone started cheering. Everyone started looking at each other and smiling and connecting. And while we're distanced physically, there is an energetic coalition, if you will, this gathering of positive energy, and that we are all connected. We are all in this together, and there's a common situation that we're all relating to. So with Sebastian Junger's book and some of those pieces of research, again, highly recommend the book. It's a beautiful book about what it's called is on homecoming and belonging, just being able to feel like there is a home, there is a connection, there is a belonging. So that research, this concept of how as human beings, we need to have some form of safety. So if I go back to what I was talking about with how we are brought up, either having a safety map or a very big threat map, while those who may be still living in dysregulation, as the question said from someone watching my videos, why are people with PTSD feeling better, sleeping better, their symptoms are decreasing? I think there's a few things, but one of them is that there is this global field of connection, purpose. And when someone didn't have that growing up, when their map was completely thrown off into total threat, unsafety, chaos, and now there's this interesting cohesion of humans coming together all around the globe, it's as if it's offering those people not only understanding, but a community. Even though they might be alone in their apartments or with just a few people, there is this global connection. There is this sense of we're all in this together, and when we're all in this together, it brings that safety back on board. Back to that first study that I talked about with the Israeli soldiers post 1973, after that specific war, there was this camaraderie. They were close to home when they were fighting, therefore their symptoms were less after war. In some strange way, it's as if that is occurring now, but it isn't with one specific spot, it's the entire globe. And so if we go back to the basic premise of how the nervous system works, what it wants, it doesn't want to be stuck in a threat cycle. It is very alluring to stay in that cycle when that is all we know. And you know that common saying, misery loves company. I'll say that one more time, misery loves company. When we're stuck in a threat cycle, it can be very easy to stay in that cycle, to stay in that disaster zone of everything is awful, everything is terrible, my life is horrible, I have all these symptoms. Our mind can keep us trapped in that. And then now we have this situation where yep, there's a lot of awful stuff occurring. There's always that stuff occurring in the world. We just don't see it in the same way we're seeing it right now. But in addition to that, there is this element of connection, community. Everyone's in this together, and it's as if we're opening up in some ways our borders, our hearts, our guts, our minds, our connections over social media. There's just a little bit more kindness happening, a bit more gratitude for what we have. And when that occurs, it takes the focus off in an interesting way off of the threat map. So for those who who know that they have PTSD, complex PTSD, that typically they are in a dysregulated state. And if you or if these people that we're talking about are feeling a bit better, my hunch, my anecdotal evidence and looking at all of the evidence and putting it together with the science is that it's giving these individuals a little drop, a little ounce, a little bit more air to breathe. The system is calming down because A, they're not alone, and B, we're all coming together and we're all realizing how absolutely connected we are at the core. So thank you for those questions it was my Instagram feed. Thank you to Sebastian Junger for dissecting that research, that information that I find is so interesting. Thank you to my teachers who have taught me about the safety map, the trauma map, and thank you to all of you who are here watching. At the end of the day, we need to practice being in our bodies, but we also need to practice being connected to others. And a lot of that can happen virtually. We're knowing right now that intention and connection doesn't have to be physical. It can be distanced, but the key is that we're all in this together. We're all connected. We have a unified purpose. I think it goes without saying that we all want a little more peace. We all want a little more freedom, a little less stress, and we want to live in safety. We want to have that safety map be built up. I think this is a beautiful time to really look at that, work with that, and focus on that, because we could get focused on the trauma and the misery piece that I just talked about really easily, especially when that was our history. But what if we change our lens, look in a different direction, and see how this is bringing good to many people. That's my wish for everyone. So one last time, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching these videos. Share this with someone who might be experiencing this, or share this with someone who's feeling a little bit of intensity, to let them know that there is this global field, this connection. And if you haven't yet downloaded and used and taken in some of my resources, on my website, everything is posted below in the Show More section. My name, it's irenelyon.com. Head over there, get some of the audios that help guide you into your body, through your body, to stay connected to the ground, connected to the environment, so that we can start bringing even more safety back to the systems of all humans here on planet Earth. All right, I will end it there. Thank you so much for being here one more time, and we will see you next time.